Okay. Everybody, please join me with the pledge to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. Welcome to the Lower Macungie Township Board of Commissioners workshop for May 23rd, 2022. Bruce will dive right in here. So number 2 on the agenda tonight is review of the Trails Connection Engineering Estimate.
Yeah, just an item with this before Brian CSAC gets started. I just wanted to say item 3, we don't have Stan this evening. Stan was working on the parks and facilities long range type planning. He's actually out of the office till Wednesday. So I just kind of wanted to tell the board too, he's been working with Brian to kind of lay out some of the things that we've been talking about long-term, the Kratzer Farm Park, the Kratzer Farm bike trails and pathways, the Spring Ridge Crossings Park, Spring Creek Bridge connection for the trail network, as well as one of those components, 2 components in our trail network system. One, as I've heard since I've been here, the connection of this campus to Brookside Road somehow, the connection from Sauerkraut to Wild Cherry, the connection from Brookside to Willow. So what we did was we tasked Brian CSAC with kind of trying to look. Him and Stan went out and did some field research. We didn't want to just do it off the mapping side to see what sites were actually out there. So this document that he came up with and what he wants to review for item 2 is kind of some cost estimates and just some overall site plan type discussions. And, you know, it's our hope as we have this part of it to kind of have the board either give some feedback tonight or reflect on some things to see that we get focused in if there's a project that the board would like us to continue to work on. We didn't want to spend dollars to go get in depth with everything. We kind of wanted to just see feedback, then we can go further. So that was our goal of this part of it. Brian's research, you'll notice in your packet some of the things. He has his own things he's going to speak about, but that was the point of this item.
Okay. Brian, the floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you, Bruce.
Wait, Brian, you don't want to sit up? I'm just kidding.
If you want me to,
Go
I'll
ahead.
sit wherever you'd like.
You're fine. Renee's in charge.
Am I good to go? All right, good. We're good. All right. So yeah, as Bruce alluded to, we've taken the overall township map. They've given us direction as which projects to focus on and really to prioritize. Looking at the list of projects that Bruce, those 5 projects that we have listed on there, the overall budget to do all of them is roughly 9.7 million. And assuming we don't want to spend all that money upfront, or we don't even really can't, the object of this is to narrow down, prioritize which projects we really want to focus on. So Bruce kind of already went through all of those, which I appreciate it. So I guess starting from Renee, if you want to go to the next slide, we're going to start with that trail system from Wild Cherry to the township campus. Now, this provides connectivity to Wild Cherry Park, I'm sorry, Spring Ridge Park, to the township pool. It also provides some good connection points to the adjacent developments. And as Bruce alluded to, we went through this plan to really look at conflicts, potential permitting issues, and any other design criteria that we have to, as far as it would take time to get these projects designed and approved. The green is our proposed trails. We're not intending to install all those trails. There are 3 potential bridge locations that Stan and I identified when we went out there in the field and looked at it. When we get further into design, we'll look at wetlands and other things like that to really determine which of those are the best. So these are just the options. There's also 2 options for crossing Sauerkraut Lane that there'll have to be a mid-block crosswalk to get across Sauerkraut. And I think, Bruce, you just alluded to actually maybe even splitting this project up into 2 projects. But for my review, we did this all as one.
Yeah, correct. And what we wanted to think about is there a way to phase that from Wild Cherry to Sauerkraut as a potential without a bridge crossing? Or can we go from the township building, get to Sauerkraut, and have, a little bit easier time or a quicker type turnaround without permitting to get across to the stream and everything else we would have to do with that. So kind of, we looked at it as a whole, but then thought budget wise, if we want to pursue this, there's ways that we can maybe break that project up. Making the bridge last, which is probably one of the most costly parts of this exercise.
Mhm.
um, and start laying
and
trail.
From a time perspective, yes, as well. And that connection up to Brookside Road, there's a dashed green line following up Sauerkraut Lane, connecting the township, or connecting this trail to the intersection of Brookside and Sauerkraut. So providing connection there so people are not going down Brookside to get to the township. Actually have a trail to access from that intersection, safe way to get there. On the south side, sorry. Sure, we can, either side is really okay. It would be
No, Swabia Creek.
on the other side of Swabia Creek.
Yeah, that,
Ye-
if you're going to go
Mhm.
just up Brookside Road to get this sauerkraut,
Mhm.
it would make sense to have a bridge crossing the Swabia close to.
The township park. We did look at that very closely. That bridge, the bridge just upstream from the township building here is one, it's a very large bridge. So there's already a very large opening there, which is difficult. The connections are difficult because once you cross over the Schwabia there, running along the farmland, that part gets tough. And there's a lot of wetlands through there, and you have the township compost facility kind of perched up high on that. It's like 30, 40 feet above the creek. And then this big drop back down to where the pool is.
It's the place where
waste.
we dispose of extra fill up there. It's one of our fill site locations. Yeah, right behind the township building.
Wonder if, just looking at this, would it be beneficial or would it be a better, I mean, you could actually do this without building a bridge. If you took that bottom green line out to Sauerkraut and somehow extended the Sauerkraut Bridge, like a walk on the outside.
Yes, that is actually one of those three options.
The second part of that, though, is instead of doing the second part of that trail, just building a sidewalk up Sauerkraut to Wild Cherry. So you don't have to cut through all of that. There's already macadam on Wild Cherry, then you don't need a mid-road crosswalk. You would actually be at the intersection of Sauerkraut and Wild Cherry. And it would be a shorter trip.
Yeah, and the other interesting.
Sidewalk from, sorry.
No, the other interesting part, Nathan and I had a discussion today about this. Those residual Wiener tract lots, as they are able to be developed with one house for farm homesteads. We had a discussion today because we actually have a permit in for one of them. And I said, well, are we going to do a macadam pathway in the front? As, the township could request with our first class township, authority to have a sidewalk there. And I said, we would like to see a sidewalk or a pathway. So as those go out, you may have the ability to then connect that side.
Because you could actually, if you put a walkway from Brookside down Sauerkraut to where it would connect to the trail, you then have connection from Route 100 to Wild Cherry of paved road, some sort of paved sidewalk, trail, whatever. The only missing piece is in front of the Hill School. Like that's that part of Sauerkraut between Brookside and Wild Cherry. And I've heard from a bunch of people who live in, the gated communities or the private communities that they wish there was something along Sauerkraut down towards the bend for them to walk, or, I think there's actually on the right side of Sauerkraut where that one community is. That's not Harris Road. Yes, there is a walkway on that side to that point. Right.
Yeah,
there.
it gets to the tree line and stops. And that, making a connection to that, yep, exactly. Making a connection to that was part of this.
I know.
That wooded area, yeah, so we do own that.
Yep.
That's where the.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
The one thing about that pathway there and connecting it is that you'd still have a mid-block crosswalk. Whereas if you came up on the other side all the way to Wild Cherry, you could cross at the intersection.
True. Yeah, if you came all the way up to Wild Cherry.
Yep. Yeah. Like, I think there has to be some sort of a connection from Brookside to Wild Cherry on Sauerkraut, which we don't have right now. It's the one piece that doesn't have
Mhm.
any pavement. And
Mhm.
I've walked it and it's not, you could walk on the Hill School side. It's not easy to walk on their land. And there's no room on the other side whatsoever.
So, okay, one of the highest priority hillside school,
Is that just little piece there? Yes. Okay.
because that really does fill in a lot of pieces. And I've got, we have a real nice walking group.
Except for that
except for
piece.
that piece.
And that might be a place too where, we've reached out to the Hillside School and with their limited funding capacity, we might try to find either multimodal or something as well too to supplement where we are. And Brian threw some quick prices just on that. If the township would do that and kind of help out the situation there as well. But that might be a grant funding eligible project, I would think.
I guess years back, that wasn't.
That wasn't required in the late 80s when we pulled their land development. You could make them as well, put one in, but with their financial situation, it's going to be difficult.
And that would be the easiest one to do.
Yeah, that would be very easy. Assume we have the right of way and other
And we
things
can
like that.
actually afford that.
Yeah.
Do you have the breakdown on that one, Brian?
So I don't have a separate breakdown for that piece. That's lumped in with all the overall pack.
So if you did, let's just say what you have up there, if you did the path without having to build a bridge, but did an extension on the bridge that's already there. Okay,
Mhm.
cantilever to the side or whatever. How does that change the price of?
So that location is probably one of the most cost effective, actually, just even if you're not gonna extend that bridge is just basically a concrete slab. It's nothing real fancy. But if you were going to put a bridge right next to it, it's probably one of the more cost effective spots, only because you don't have to size the opening for the floodway. You just have to make it as big as the bridge that's there. So it's a shorter span, it's a lower span. That is probably one of the more cost-effective options that we would look at. That would.
And we talked about this too, as we're doing our ongoing bridge assessment and our long-term planning for bridge replacement. Where does this bridge fall on that replacement schedule? And is this something then that we could just incorporate as we upgrade the bridge?
It's not a full two-lane bridge.
No, it's a one. It's a one with, it's a one with half.
Yeah.
You
And
can get
so-
to, but
Yield, yeah.
it's not.
Okay, so, yeah, part of it. How long is it gonna last as is? Does it make sense to go ahead and just put in? And, have plenty of room for walking kids on both sides.
I think considering the assessment it's about to get underway for all the township bridges, as you guys are talking about this and putting I'll say an extension on the bridge, it's a great idea, but we have to be careful about planning. So in conjunction with the fact that it's kind of a nice coincidence that the bridge inspections and planning is already underway, we factor this in so that no matter what Brian winds up dialing in for this particular section, that we account for that. Because I do think it's really kind of ideal to be able to attach something to it, or if the bridge does need to be replaced, factor in extending it when you do the replacement. That definitely would be the most cost-effective way to do it.
I think, that, one thing to note too, and when you look at the, I guess that would be the northeast side of the plan or the east side of the plan, if you want to call it that, on Sauerkraut. just to make note, Brian has that on his things. Like if we come through that township parcel at the top, just a reminder, he has steep slope on there with, 70 feet difference. So if there's a will to connect eventually to Wild Cherry, we should be mindful that either A, we're going to have a little bit steeper terrain there, or B, we might have to make that bridge crossing anyway. So just something to be, noted on that side, and that could keep the cost of that project a little bit elevated. Even if we can get the bridge to work out on Sauerkraut and have the widening, that'll get us to Brookside. But, the other component of that, if you want to expand the trail, or if you're just happy getting it to Wild Cherry and they can go Wild Cherry and down that way.
Well, by getting Wild Cherry, we already get to Brookside because there's already trail there.
I was talking about the original like Greenway layout from like Wild Cherry to Sauerkraut on the low end, like over here, which was like one of the original Greenway plans.
I mean, I think it's great that you can come through there, but I also think that you may be creating more work for yourself and cost than what you need if you can come right up Sauerkraut to Wild Cherry.
So the other piece of this is that Greenway Trail then eventually connects back into, so you can see the confluence of the Schwabia and the Little Lehigh there. That Greenway Trail then comes back and follows the Little Lehigh, continuing east or south, I guess, page south. So that trail then continues down the page from the master plan. So you want to still provide a connection to that somehow
But as far
eventually.
as priority,
Mhm.
it seems like getting the path around along along
Sauerkraut to Brookside, right?
to Brookside.
Yep.
Is the highest priority. And then I would say the next would be running from Sauerkraut to the township. Third would be
Okay.
running from Sauerkraut to Wild Cherry.
And
Okay.
like I said, even the third part, I think is not even absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I mean, so it's,
That's why it's not.
Especially in the
priority.
scope of the rest
Yeah.
of these projects.
Yeah, I
too.
mean, I would have to think it's more cost effective than going through all that land and trying to traverse the terrain there.
Mhm.
Just come up straight up.
Mhm. And it's certainly one of those things that, yeah, maybe that just gets put in the C list or the D list.
at the end of the 15-year.
There you go. You can build anything with enough time and money. We'll spend our money on.
That north side is steep. Plus you got that house with that tree that ends up on the side.
Yeah. I think
That'd be tough to
go to the south side. But again, it's
Oh,
as
yeah.
part of that those parcels. That's okay. I mean, part of those, when they break them out.
south side is black compared to the north.
I mean, I've done it. I've done, from my house to McCungy and back. The hill on the other side of the bridge is steep for sure. But coming back up Sauerkraut there, you're on the wrong side of the road.
Mhm.
But I think the other component too is if you scroll, I have to scroll on mine, but if you look at this future connection too, this will get you
Mhm.
to the next neighborhood, right?
Mhm.
So there's another piece of this that could be fairly important. Then you get from Brookside all the way, all the way through the neighborhood.
Well, in actuality,
I make that bigger.
just continuing that along Sauerkraut to get to those developments. Then you can walk through those developments, use the path to get to Jasper or
Jared Farmer.
and then have that little stub off of their outside thing and you're at the township building without building.
And you throw in the fact that new development, the Tuscans development, just put their walkway in. And that they're going to sell that other piece to Tuscans. It's another connection there on the other side. Now almost had that whole length of Sauerkraut.
Connecting it all. So this little piece to Jarrett Farm is also kind of like a,
Kind of a priority, right? Like not a
Maybe
top
two.
one, not a hillside school priority, right? But it's still in the,
it's in, if we're gonna do the path to the township building from Sauerkraut to the township, we should make that connection. Okay. Yeah. Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess here actually, just before we skip ahead, I just wanted to point out, yeah, that the overall budget for what's shown here was 1.9. Obviously, you're talking about splitting that up with priorities, just for kind of your reference. And the path shown on this plan from the township to Wild Cherry is 1.7 miles worth of path. And there's some of the other items, conflicts and things that were discussed in the pack. So, okay. I just wanted to give you that as a reference so that when you look at this next section, that one was 1.7 miles. This is 0.8. I put this one second because it's just so similar to the previous one. I kind of skipped over the Spring Ridge Park. For now, we'll get back to that, but this has a lot of the same sort of permitting issues where we have to go through DEP with pedestrian crossings, things like that. And being close to the creek, wetland permitting, that kind of stuff. So there's still, and I didn't mention this in the last one, but any bridges or things like that are going to have a long lead time on design. So both these projects, since they're similar, are really in that 2024 kind of range if you're going to do bridges. Now, that connection in front of the school on the other one, that's definitely something we could jump on right away. But if we're going to get bridges involved in other things, that's going to push these projects out to the 2024 at the range at the earliest. So this is similar in that kind of permitting perspective. Has a lot of the same sort of design criteria. One of the big differences between this one and the one we just discussed is the PennDOT crossings. That Brookside Road does not have a pedestrian crossing between the two developments there. And I would think from a safety perspective that we'd want to see a safe crosswalk there, especially we're having two paths connect to each other.
I was under the impression. Traffic.
we are grabbing those. Yeah, that is on the rotation for the box.
And are they gonna get it done before the snow's flying?
We'll have it done. I think it's actually up fairly soon.
So the pedestrian crossing Brookside as well as for Willow.
Well, and the good part about this is there's like a local business there that we can force with bridges, so we don't have to pay for it. That would be an enhancement to their business.
Only on the Willow Lane side.
I read in the report, those abutments are no good anymore, the old road.
They are, yeah, they're stacked stone and they're not, yeah, I would not trust to put a pedestrian bridge on top of this. I don't expect them to last too much longer. Not that we can't put a bridge there.
Okay,
but
the
the abutments-
idea of going under the road is
Mhm.
sort of appealing,
Yes, you eliminate the pedestrian crossing. there.
except for the fact that.
Yes, you're right. It's appealing, but you're absolutely right that getting the easements and the property is a huge time endeavor
Well,
as well as cost.
It is all floodplain. It was supposed to be township land that just didn't get included in
Kratzer Farm.
the Kratzer Farm. And somebody picked it up for a song several years ago.
You could definitely do that. We've researched that part of it. That could be a solution if the board would want to move down that path.
Or the tax paid.
Taxes are paid. I think they're insignificant, $100, $200.
A couple years ago, they tried to throw water knowledge. You're talking about the southeast side of the bridge.
The,
Right.
the part between the
Basically from
between
the
the
old road bed to where the new
current,
road
the
got
old
connected
and
to.
new.
On the south side of the creek,
Yeah.
the river. Yes.
Agree.
Somebody
It's-
put a fence there. 5, 6 years ago. Watermelons. Probably remnants of the fence there.
Yeah, it's a little camper.
It's the road that goes into the little property. we picked up.
Well, it's
Yeah.
between.
Yeah,
that road
I know,
and-
right.
It's $77.99 worth of taxes to the school, the county, and the township, and they are current. So the township's $2.48 annual tax.
Anybody care? Be opposed to going after that?
But without making a decision. We make decisions.
You can talk about it and we can make a decision at a future meeting.
Yeah,
You
I
could,
don't know how far we can go down the road.
you can have, yeah, we gotta wait
we-
for that at a regular meeting.
Yeah, we don't have anything on the agenda to vote on
Yeah.
tonight, so we can tee it up.
I
We
think
just
it's
can't take a
definitely
vote.
discussion topic. I wouldn't have a problem. We're not talking about a big piece of land. We're talking about a $77 tax.
I think so.
We,
And I would say, I guess, as part of this exercise too, and it's gauging the will of the board. If you look at the budget to bring the pathway down, I want to say what it was at Brian. If we don't cross any bridges, it was like 180,000 plus contingencies. It was a plan that may be attainable just to even have the connection in the neighborhood. Is that something on the boards? As we rank through these, right? Is that more of a priority to have a pathway extended there? Or is the item we just talked about, Brookside to Wild Cherry to the township building, is that a higher priority or a lower priority?
So if you go under
Do
the
we,
bridge, you still need a bridge to get to the project.
you do.
correct.
So either way, you need a bridge. Or bridges, no benefit.
Yeah, the benefit is you eliminate the pedestrian crossing on Willow. You can go under the road instead of having to have a crosswalk on Willow. Yeah, that's the benefit. You need a bridge either.
And I guess back kind of the follow-up, like, is this a project that you have interest in? Is it with its price and potential, I don't want to say ease, even if you connect the neighborhood and don't go under Willow Lane, if you come to the top where into the neighborhood this way and just end it there? Right? Is it important for the board or a priority for us to look at this pathway? And is it a higher priority than Brookside to Wild Cherry, Sauerkraut to the township building? Or, is it higher or lower?
I think, well, go ahead.
Well, not only to Kratzer Farm, that would connect you to that John Fry's road development.
Right, that's that little dotted line.
Right, because got that property where we're gonna put the switchback trail in. There's already a trail at the top of that dead ends. Comes by that barn at the sharp turn. Up there and it dead ends. So this trail is pursued both from Brookside up to that existing trail and along the walking path along Willow Lane, all the way down to Sauerkraut. I would connect more that way than shooting over to the Kratzer Farm.
Yeah, I think you can look at it as 6 one, half dozen the other, depending on what direction you're coming from. If you're coming from the township building, the most important part would be connection from the township to Sauerkraut, and then Sauerkraut to Wild Cherry, whichever formation you go to, because that gets you out to Brookside. If you're coming from Willow Lane School, this could be more important because you could walk up Sauerkraut, up Willow Lane, through that development, and catch this trail all the way out to Wild Cherry.
Right. Across Brookside,
So-
go all the way over.
I think it just depends on what direction you started. I think they're equally important. They both need to be done. But I would say if you're going to start with the Hillside School part, then I would start on that side of the project. Meaning that the Hillside School part would be 1. The connection from the township to Sauerkraut is 2, and this is 3. or it's 2A and 2B, depending on how you look at it.
Okay, in general, I prefer trails that get you somewhere rather than looping around. The other is easy to segment. This one is sort of an all in all. But it's going halfway doesn't do you any good. And so, yeah, I would sort of view it as do the cherry picking on the other. This one is. Trying all of the budget stuff I've been seeing is heavily fronted. Trying to get it spaced out some. Yeah, I would see this as a important midterm.
But the one on the south side of Little Lehigh, from Brookside, end up in Sauerkraut Lane, no bridge required. Brookside,
Yeah.
the Greenway, to property we got along the river, across from the Willows, and up the Switchback Trail to the existing trail that's back there. That comes down
I
to
don't know what.
the Lighthouser property. We bought that for future trail connection. That's why we bought that property. The Lighthouser house that was ripped down.
Oh, the one, yeah.
Right, well, that connects to that trail that's already existing on the top of that hill.
Right here.
On this side of the bridge.
Right here.
There's a trail on the rear of that property that's there.
But can we connect to it from?
It's already connected to the development. It's the rear of their house properties there, it runs along it. It's not used at all.
Yeah, I know, but
And it's-
I thought it just dead ended.
That ended there, but it parallels the Lighthouser property that we bought.
The other side of the lighthouse.
Would be right at across from the bridge that the abutments are not good.
At the Bingham's.
At the Mango,
This one.
that's the name, I was trying to think of the name, at the Mango property. The township
Here.
even has that trail that no one even know is walking. There's signs there, steep slope. But nobody probably didn't even know that.
Kind of,
Well,
There's a
dead ends in both directions.
It dead
Dead ends
ends.
right down at Willow and it dead ends at the top of the hill.
Yes, correct. And where it dead ends down at Willow, it's only approximately one block to where Willow Lane
New
coming
trail
from the
connection.
south, dead ends.
We looked at that as a connection
Yeah, maybe you
with
can
Kratzer
explain it
Farm.
better.
If you flip to Kratzer, which is 2 sheets,
It's like a
it's
forgotten trail back.
probably a
okay,
better.
so
I'm probably the only one.
Okay, so it sounds like it would be worth looking into about that connection
Right here.
as sort of a.
One more.
separate
that's it.
standalone piece.
And the only reason I
not
brought it
shown
up
very
is
well
that's
there.
why we bought the lighthouse.
It's
right
bottom,
here.
it's right there.
That connected that trail down to the Mango property.
I just thought we bought it for different hazards.
Well,
They didn't even realize it.
yeah, it's right on the property.
Mhm.
Here, right.
Yeah. If there was a connection from that trail, there's another property just up from there. There was connection from that trail into the open space behind.
I know where you.
Yeah, if there was a connection there, that would be optimal. I think to go down the property that you're referring to, it's a lot of, that steep slope up, and then it would be a lot of steep slope down.
And there's something in the way of connecting into that. what at one time was a detention pond, it's now.
Yeah, there's a lot mowed back there.
Renee's gonna grab the overhead.
There's a lot mowed back there that is open, township open
Yeah,
space.
that's what, that's.
It is a lot of it, yeah.
Yeah, at one point.
It's-
it was a detention
It'd be a beautiful place to put a path. You just right through the lawn. It'd be great. Gorgeous. Well, it's
huge.
sporadic trees.
Renee actually has it
Either
up.
way, it's nice. I mean, people without a trail.
So, yeah, if, as a small project, if you could just look into.
That path into
That
development.
stuff into the overall. Sort of site experience.
And so Renee actually was able to grab this up. So what Maury and Ron and Brian were talking about. So right here is actually, there is a macadam path that goes up the hillside. So that comes from Willow. Here's our bridge down in Kratzer. It comes straight up here. No one knows about it. It's basically abandoned. We haven't done maintenance in it.
Yep.
Like right here. So it actually stops at the top of the hill and we have no connection into this neighborhood.
Only
town-
connection would be through that property.
The township owns this piece of property right here. So you could come from this trail to here and up and around and through the property to have the connection, and you would not have to go under here or build the bridge. You would connect
That's exactly what I.
this pathway over. You would need, that's why we had proposed part of that. If you come back into this portion to the neighborhood, then you could come out and around in the loop or out this way and down, and in through here and down and across and hit Kratzer that way.
That path actually stops at the road. Like you said,
Oh, you know
there's
what?
another path that dead ends.
That
Not
would
too
almost
far.
drop you 50 foot away from that concrete bridge going into Kratzer.
Correct. So there is the bottom of the pathway. The bridge you are referencing is basically,
50, 100
Right.
foot up the street.
it's,
Like
Right here.
Yeah.
yeah. So,
It's like right away around the barn.
all right, well, it sounds like this trail connection is still something that interests the board, not as high priority as over here off the campus. So, but higher priority than sauerkraut to wild cherry. Not the hillside to wild cherry,
The
but
other one,
sauerkraut north to wild cherry.
right, the one that goes behind.
Correct. All right. You with that, Brian?
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Julie,
Sorry, can I
I
go
got
the
a
other
question.
way?
Yeah.
That, when they come out of Wild Cherry Knoll, the people walk through your, to get into, and they get to the walking path that's on Lorna. Right, so when they come out of there, they can shoot straight across in your area.
Question, Julie? No, that would be number one on the priority.
That the part that would be from sauerkraut to wild cherry on the back behind all the neighborhoods would be the lowest priority.
That's the lower priority because I think personally, you're more likely or better off coming up sauerkraut to wild cherry than carving a trail behind all that. But yeah, no, wait. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that.
I don't,
Maury thought of that too with the Turnpike Bridge, going to cantilever or walking path, Lower McCungy Road. But anyway, Julie, I remember that man that always walked when he used to come to all the meetings. Walked and walked. He was out there with PennDOT and there was some kind of issue about at Princeton. We're talking about hanging
yeah,
cantilever in the
Princeton
walking
Bridge.
path.
this bridge right here.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember discussing it. I don't remember there being like a design or an engineering issue with it, other than it was a PennDOT just being PennDOT.
Sort of went away.
Well, and again, you're talking about putting the cantilever walkway on that bridge to nowhere right now. I mean, you're not going anywhere. There's no sidewalk, there's no, so it would have to, maybe at the time it was, we don't want to do, we're not going to say yes, because where are you walking to? All right. Well, no, that's good. And yes, the priority is still where you would like it to be. Okay, let's move forward.
Yep.
To
The Spring Ridge Crossings Park.
So, and part of the reason why we looked at this and in Stan's proposed plan, and when he can speak to that next month when we talk about his plan, part of his proposal included like the relocation of a larger playground facility at this park. And with that, the elimination of Danfield right there and Winding Brook, and having a larger, $300,000 or $400,000 playground part in that. So we said, all right, if we were going to put a playground at the front location near the parking lot, and you can see Brian's notes, large playground, 50 by 70 area. Then we kind of said, all right, well, we need a way to connect it ADA compliantly to, parking, plus can we get it to the pathway where the fishing pier is, or where the parking is to go to the fishing access. So Brian,
which park is it?
this is Springer Ridge,
Crossing.
Springer Crossing.
So Wild Cherry will be down here at the bottom.
Yeah,
That would be
Wild
the-
Cherry would be over here. Yeah. And so we kind of out of this too, we know that they play some recreational sports out here. Sometimes they're lining these as soccer fields. Sometimes they have these as half fields or open space. So we asked Brian and said, what can we do? If you could just throw a quick association. So you see there's two soccer fields that are existing, another large flex area that you could use for mini fields. And as part of that, he looked further and said, okay, well, if you have these here and you have a playground, would a phase of this situation potentially include restrooms? So while you're there and you're at that part of the park, so he has that in there as well. So I think when you talk about kind of costs and things we looked at, is there any inkling to, and like I said, when we talk about Stan's plan, to consolidate playgrounds, do one larger playground that's in the neighborhood. The connectivity is pretty good there. It's a little bit difficult to come over Brookside at that point. However, I think when Stan talks about park planning, one of the other parks on the other side is also available to the residents in that community a little further. But that's kind of where this idea came from to look at this portion.
Yeah, and this is really big picture. They're just kind of defining some areas that certainly can kind of shuffle and move around a little bit. One of the big perks to this is that there's no real outside agencies other than the PP&L right away you'd have to cross under. So there's that piece of this project that would require us to go get approval and feedback from them. But all the other parts are all on our own property. Obviously, we need to get MPS and that kind of stuff, stormwater portions. But from a permitting perspective, this is a lot simpler than either of those other two pathways. There's just a lot less involved. So this one has the potential to be available to do even next year if you wanted us to push to design, we get shovels in the ground fairly quickly.
So you'd be, in this plan, we're looking at the two playground areas and I'm assuming sewer and water for bathrooms? Is
So
that-
water and sewer are actually already stubbed in there. They were stubbed in there when the parking lot.
Okay.
So it's really just putting a bathroom and pavilion, just putting the structure that they're grading.
Okay.
in the building.
Listen, I can tell you, and this is, I'll speak for women right now, which doesn't happen very often. But I was at a game this weekend at a place that had nothing but porta potties, and watching them not drink water for 2.5 hours so that they didn't have to go into the porta potties makes me believe that every park should have actual bathrooms, because it was 98 degrees. They were like ready to pass out, but they wouldn't drink anything because they didn't want to have to go. I didn't mind personally.
But I think, when we look at that part of it, like that was the part, like if you have your stroller and your family and you're coming up the sidewalk, getting that connection piece to that, but then also having that connection instead of having people go through the parking lot to get to a bathroom facility on the northeast portion of that. Knowing that you may be there with your kids and that may be more appealing.
I still, and I know I've said this before, but I need to see, and this is more of a visual thing for me. I'd love to be able to put like a map of the township on that wall right there and indicate where every one of our play places are so we can see.
We have that. We actually have that. So I know the CKS guys have been working with Chris. After our meeting in the fall, we have a map of passive/active recreation space, and we could do a large map like that.
Because for me, it's hard to look at it on multiple sheets, just so I can get in my head, okay, if we're gonna put money into here, which is down the road from Wild Cherry Park, which is another larger park, what are we eliminating in this area that makes sense? And are we putting it in the right place?
Sure.
Because listen, I guess it's Danfield where we have the play place, that's the one that no one I've ever seen anybody in, which would be part of that trail area. That could be replaced by this, or as they come up for replacement, instead of replacing what's there right now with something new, do we find something that's a little more strategically located that can be, I guess, more grandiose, instead of having a million little ones all over the place that we're constantly taking care of.
And I think when we can definitely have the map, that's what I just talked to Brian about, we'll have it. And then, when Stan does his too, everybody can see where it is. The visual, I'm sure will be a lot easier.
Yeah, I know that our GIS guy's been working with Stan and with other members of staff to get caught up, I'll say, with adding in some things that hadn't been put in the system for a while. And, we can create whatever kind of map you want, have whatever amount of detail for the park stuff, open space, things like that. So Bruce, if you think that we already have that.
You have it.
Um,
Yeah, Chris is working on it. You have it.
and like relative to size, we can plot it out at just about whatever you want. So.
All right, so this one might take a little further thought after we hear Stan's park plan, but wanted to have it in there. The budget you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, all the paths, pavilion, and including the play structure. We price up this play structure with ADA compliant surface, so that's $130,000 right there. But all in for what's shown here, we're just over $1 million. So it's a big chunk of change.
All right.
300,000.
Logical things.
A third of that is just the play structures themselves.
But does it start off with food?
Yeah,
Just the bathroom.
that's what,
facilities.
see, the way I look
Sure.
at this is because you still have play places in other areas around here for now. By the time those are ready to be replaced, then you're kind of trading off.
Mhm.
Instead of putting $100,000 in the Danville run, it comes into here, and $100,000 into Windy Brook or whatever, it goes into here. So now you're borrowing from one place to another.
Yep.
Bathrooms to me is a no-brainer. Like that would be the highest priority here, just because of the use. Listen, I think of people walking on that path who have to go to the bathroom. They just walk up and go to the bathroom. It's convenience sake.
getting the bathroom in and then connect the actual trail connections to the bathroom as well?
Well, I mean, you can walk up from the trail right now to, if that. bathroom
Using the
went in.
roads, yep.
Yeah, I mean, you just come up and you go to the parking lot, you leave the bathroom there, you know it's there.
Okay.
But yeah, actually, but actually
Yeah.
having a stub from
Yeah.
the trail up there would be a big.
Absolutely.
The bathroom itself, price that out at 180 for just filling it, which
is
just, yeah.
workable.
Okay, and then, yeah, throw in a pan,
Parking.
Down to the
parking
trail.
lot down to the trail.
Okay.
And then the other stuff gets. shoved out the way.
That's gotta be. short path.
It's very
Parking
short.
lot to the trail.
Yeah, it's
100
a
feet
little
maybe.
slope, but
It's slow.
so a little bit, it'll take a little.
This one that goes to Brookside.
Well, there already is. I mean, if you look, if you come out of that back parking lot behind the baseball field where the parking is to go fishing,
There's actually, yeah,
there is a trail. I mean, I've walked it, that's why I know it's there.
Yeah,
So you can already walk up
Yeah,
where the
okay,
bathrooms would be. So we don't even need to stop it. It's there.
okay,
there is
yeah.
a trail on the top side of it.
Yeah,
Ties
right down
into the
there.
parking lot.
exactly.
okay, so, yeah, just go with.
You just, you'd walk through the parking lot to get to the bathroom.
The trail's only a year or two old.
Yeah, I know that when I was walking it, I had walked at it before, down that way and past it. So, yeah, that's where they park. There's a couple parking spots right there at the bottom that you can walk down.
All right, relative to the first two projects, sounds like the bathroom out of this one is the most important. How does the bathroom relate as far as priority relative to the connection to the township building? What's the priority there?
Well, I would think that based on what it is, and what we have to do, it could be done relatively
Minimal
quickly.
engineering, absolutely.
So, well, I don't know, I don't know if priorities for it work. I think it's more doable,
Oh, yeah.
in a shorter time.
Sure, yeah.
I would probably keep the
Sewer
top.
stuff.
So call it front loaded,
This
but
is-
priority will be established by
Yeah.
overall budget constraints.
what he said.
So it depends on how much money we have for the rest of these projects to see
Right.
which one.
Yeah.
Like that could be a 23 budget item. If the
It could
money's-
be, yeah.
Because it could be done that,
Sounds like this is.
oh yeah.
And I think the connection at the school from the first project, just that little piece is a very
Yeah.
achievable piece.
Listen, if you think about this, this isn't far-fetched at this point. You're really close to having walkability from Route 100 to Indian Creek Road on Saturday. Like, you're not far away from being able, so you can walk the entire length of that without ever having to step foot on the road. And that's just one, and that piece that you're talking about from the school is a huge part of that.
And this bathrooms, depending on permitting, I mean, that may be something that could be a very straightforward.
One thing I will say about the bathrooms is very important. They can't look like the Farmington Hills bathrooms, whatever we do, because those things are the ugliest things ever. It's the ugliest building in the township. Just put a peak roof on it, it would look better, but the design has to be up to our standards.
It does, and we also have to make sure we have plenty of surveillance in these parks, as we
Yeah.
notice our bathrooms being vandalized, unfortunately,
Right, yeah.
so. We will make sure that everything is visually appealing.
I'm grading an ADA, you guys can pick what it is.
I mean, it literally is the definition of a brick black, blank house. That's exactly what it is.
We will make it. We will use rigorous standards. All right, can we move on?
Yes, please.
All right, so we've heard with the Kratzer plan, the farm plan, all the things and the features to look at that situation. Brian took this in multiple pieces just to kind of have something for the board to maybe start with, including the parking lot and then maybe one of the outer loop trails. I think the overall budget was around, what, Brian, about 3.9 million?
4.7.
4.7, sorry, I stand corrected.
We,
And what we,
oh, sorry, I was gonna say, just for reference, we actually bumped all the budgets 25% in this last, because all the numbers we've been getting lately are crazy. And everything that has been coming in that we've been bidding lately has come in consistently 25% higher than anything we've expected. So all these numbers account for that inflation too.
and so, once again, we kind of wanted to see where we were in the priority on this park. Knowing that we have open space there now for the enjoyment of the community. We've heard about trail connections. Is that a priority? We've heard about the fishing pier. The pond is in there, and that was in the original report to be ADA accessible situation feature in there. Then we also have the crossing that we looked at with a concrete bridge already that's existing. And then how do we get it around near Willow Lane and the PennDOT Bridge, like we talked about with the old Willow Lane and the new Willow Lane. So we kind of wanted to see too where this falls in the board's priorities, as opposed, in relation to the rest of the things we've seen. So, and I think, Brian, what we've talked about is potentially laying the parking lot.
You build it, they will come.
As Brian says, if we build it, they will come, and then have that connection piece or a loop trail out of the parking lot, up towards this area, like the light blue trail. We'd like to maybe position this to keep some of the woods there down in here and up into the other neighborhood, and have that be part of the phase. If we can go, to a phase around the pond out of the parking lot. Those have been kind of our priorities, the parking for the lot and the potential fishing pier there. Our lower priorities, and Brian, unless I misspeak, are this outer loop ring just because of the cost. More of like, can we come out of the neighborhood, into this situation on the lot, potentially maybe come down and get to Willow Lane as a priority, and the phases out from that.
Yeah, and I think some of the reasons that's the priority is, one, getting a parking lot in gets people access, and then, it makes it usable. Two, that loop road around is a lot of paving, so it adds up quick. It's, there's a lot of cost there, as well as those connections, a lot of those incorporated connections to the neighboring developments, like the school across Sauerkraut, getting across Willow Lane, and all those include bridges, and pedestrian crossings, which are going to take more time, as well as are really expensive. Parking lot and paths, the connections that Bruce just discussed, are also one of those items that would be easy from a design perspective, from a permitting perspective. So depending on the scope of that, there's potential to do parts of this, to have shovels in the ground in 2023.
Again, yeah, there's lots of things we could do in
Yes.
2023.
Oh, there are.
But $1 billion here and $200,000 there.
I don't know. Did I mention this? The total cost of all these projects is 10 million.
It's
It was not the intent to say that we should do all of that. The whole point of being here is to prioritize.
Well, and I think the other part of that too is we've heard, we have all of these plans for all of these things, Kratzer Farm, it's a $5 million plan, the Greenway Trail Connection plan that was approved, all of these things trying to show the board and relate to the fact that, we have $500,000 to $600,000 in deferred maintenance in parks and play structures and facilities. And for those things to know that most of that budget is going to be focused in there, but to see or deliver on some of these things that, seem to have been a community priority, we wanted to associate a cost to show you, okay, we can look at a parking lot and a pathway in Kratzer, but this is going to cost us $400,000. Is that an important, high priority piece for the board? Or does that go after we're done fixing playgrounds and play structures? Then does that go into a priority list? And then in that priority, for staff to look at a 4, 5, 8, 10-year plan, is it the connection from the township building? Is it the connection of greenway pieces? Is it the Kratzer Park we've heard about? To try to lay that out for you guys. And I think that's the part of the exercise where $10 million in today's dollars, is that something you want staff and the engineer and everything to keep going to look at those further?
Not that I am into fishing. But actually, it seems to me, putting in the few places that would ultimately be the handicap parking and run a path from there to the fishing pond so that people could go fishing would probably be the. And the bigger parking lot and the toilets again would be the midterm, and then the loop path would be down the ways thing. One of the things is that we need to figure out what we're going to do with solar community. We ought to do that. But people having a few parking spaces and a way to get to the fishing pond.
You read my mind, because you don't put a path in at the same time you put the parking lot in. It'll be the parking lot to nowhere.
Yeah.
It will be to nowhere. It'll just be probably a hangout.
Yeah, so, I mean, and actually the parking that you put in initially can be just gravel. And, you know, we can come back and put macadam on it later. Just
The mine hole is a straight path.
from the barn.
And that was an answer question. That pond is an old mine. Right?
Well, that's what it's been called since I'm a little kid.
Do we have to stop that for fishing?
It's
just-
already
We did,
been
okay.
stopped.
At some point, yes, we would make sure that we have an appropriate fishing
There was
stocking.
a charitable contribution.
But that mine hole, whatever it is, I swam it 40-some years ago. Because of all the runoff of the sediment running into that, through the drain ditch, right from the parking lot to the mine. There are.
But
There
there,
are. But
on the bottom side, it's pretty,
Yeah, it's almost like
where the water runs
ground
out,
level.
it's pretty level. And so that would be a good place for ADA access to.
The reason this is a hot topic for a lot of people, because when names Lee threw this all up, maybe Nate, you could help me. Who was the man that developed this plan? Mark Lee,
Adam Supplee. Yep.
yes, and the whole township knew about it, and it was at least 5 or 6 years ago, longer.
Yeah, they did this plan a little while ago.
And a lot of questions are always raised. But anyway, what Maury said, a starting point, in my opinion, would be the parking lot. Called the fishing.
And here's the thing people have to understand, and I understand it's been a long time. I've never been a proponent of this plan. The day it came out, and it's because that's not my kind of thing. Now, I think there are things we should do with this. I think the parking lot's important. I think the fishing is important. I think the trails are important. I could do without anything else in this place. It's passive recreation. It's open space. People who talk about the plan or why is it implemented have to come back to us or we have to go back to them and explain to them what it costs to do this plan. That we became the township of plans for 4 or 5 years. We're playing for everything with no explanation on how to pay for it. This doesn't just happen magically with a $150 tax bill. It's not going to get done. To me, if you can do those 3 things here, if you can make this an actual loop path, which is extensive in terms of length. It gives you that nature feel that you're looking for. It can connect you out to Willow Lane on that bridge if however we replace that bridge, that piece of concrete. It gives you the fishing that, at least it gives you pond fishing as opposed to stream fishing. I think it's a home run. Anything else that happens beyond that is great. This was a beautiful plan. It's a beautifully done plan. We paid a lot of money for it.
It's filled with a lot of stuff.
It's filled with a lot of stuff that we
For
can't
farms.
afford. Yeah, we can't afford. Mm-hmm. No, it could become a hazard that way. Right. Mm-hmm.
And a cost estimate, right? That's what they ask in all the DCNR, all of the, multimodal, all of those situational grants that we've looked at internally so far. We need a number and we need a basic design that we can provide them. It doesn't have to be full-fledged, but they want to know that we're serious with moving forward. So as we designate these items,
Yeah.
now we can go and apply and say, hey, we want to do loop trail, 500,000 XYZ.
Right.
So helping us dial these in allows us to get documentation together.
Well, and I think what we're getting at tonight, at least from my perspective, is you can take these pieces and start putting them on a calendar and say, okay, this is what's possible in 2023, depending on funds. This is what is possible in 2024. Now, it may go to 2025, but this is where we're looking at based on cost and, breaking all these down into little pieces.
Exactly.
Right.
Then it's kind of like, all right, wait,
Where's Kratzer?
prioritize the trail stuff.
Mhm.
Which are we really dialed?
Well, and yeah, I think we have to that's when we get to budget time and we say, okay, here's the things that we listed that could be done in 2023. What do you want to do? What can we afford to do?
Exactly. Exactly. And that'll help us because obviously we're starting to get the budget. So this will help us kind of take the next step. All the work. Really, in terms of a lot of stuff that's there. It'll help us get a little bit closer to having action.
I mean, there's somebody who's been asking for like a 5-year plan for a long time. So I think he'd be happy to get one at some point, wouldn't you?
Good, that's the whole
I've
point.
been
That's
thinking,
why we're here.
maybe it ought to be in 20 years.
Yeah,
later,
at
so we
this
have
point.
5 years left by
Yeah.
the time it's done.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing, it's
Well, and I also, oh, I'm sorry, Brian.
no, I was gonna say, like, I know that Bruce spent a lot of time guiding us to get to the point of like all this together. And they are budget estimates, but legitimate estimates of this is what we
as opposed to just continue to talk about like walk away from this. September, November, that's the budget. We've got a pretty good idea. And that ties in bridge. So they're inching closer to getting to the place. Well, and the third piece of this is we have to learn, we have to get better at leveraging our relationships with partners in the community to get some of this done. You know, this isn't, it's not a poor community from a business standpoint, at least from a large business standpoint, who can help defray some costs or offset some costs depending on how we do it and how we tie it in. And that's something we've never done a real good job with, that we need to do a better job. And that needs to kind of build into this. How do we, you know, how do we get the, you know, smooth on loop trail of Kratzer Park? Or how do you get the Mack truck, you know, whatever, you know, they're a big part of this community. And if we can get them to invest more in the infrastructure and the amenities that this community offers, it just bodes well for everybody.
And-
Mhm.
And we can, right, we can push the community fund. We also have that ability now to speak in more concrete terms. Like, hey, this is, we have a potential to get this done in 4 years, not, we don't know, like maybe it might not come around. It's a lot easier to pitch to businesses that way.
You wind up with the St. Luke's Athletic Complex,
Right.
which trust me, they would love to they throw their name on everything. Pit them against Lehigh Valley, it could be interesting. Be like the Sharks and the Jets. Who's going to win? No singing and dancing. Okay.
That was the intent of this. That's why we broke this, even the Kratzer down into all those options to really zero in. So it sounds like parking, the handicap parking is priority. The orange parking, we'll call it up on the, is the second priority. And fishing piers are kind of, or I'm sorry, the walking trails around that's like that's a more long-term.
Right. Yeah.
And it still seems to me like the connection from Brookside to Wild Cherry, the township building to Sauerkraut, potentially the, and I guess this would be the clarification piece. Are we going to go Brookside to Willow, or are we going to go Kratzer for the parking lot and the pier and the connection? Is that above your Brookside to Willow list in a priority?
Actually,
Depends what it costs.
well, backing up a little bit. Okay, as far as the part of front of Hillside School is number one.
Right. That's
But number two, what I would like to see is a path from Sauerkraut and Brookside to the township building running along Brookside Road. That seems a whole lot more utilitarian than following the creek and so forth, as far as just, you got a bridge you got to deal with, but
I mean, the bridge itself could be really expensive in that location because of wetlands and the width of that crossing.
maybe we'll put in a ferry across there.
How much does PennDOT complicate that, considering that we're on a PennDOT road and you have to have some sort of crossing at some point? If you went on we're on the west side or the southwest side, you have to cross over. And I don't know if you can do the north side because of the houses.
Well, you have an issue. When we did a quick look, was the topography of that east side, because it's basically cliff there. I mean, we have the right of way that's there, but then you're literally coming down the right of way and coming over that floodway to get behind the pool here. So we said the easiest way should be quickest, easiest, and probably most cost effective is to run along the stream and get to Sauerkraut. It would behoove us to pay for the trail to go up Sauerkraut towards Wild Cherry. Would probably be able to accomplish that for less dollars than coming down Brookside.
Is that easement? Well, that's open space. Now. It used to be an easement.
Through-
To the bridge of the Swabia from the farm right up the street.
The,
There used to be a road through there.
You get the map.
well, there, and we do have an access easement that wraps around the part of the Lichtenmoller farm that got sold when it was being developed, so we can go around the backside of it. We don't have to go right down Brookside Road.
that barn up
That they, yeah,
They redid.
yeah,
That
they tore
road
down the
used to
house
go-
and put in.
Yes.
that
So if you
road
looked
used
at,
to Come out at the bridge of the Swabia.
the township does control ownership of this piece here. This is right, the former Lichtenwalner farm. Let me move in a little bit here. Right, but as you're coming in here, as Brian said, even if you come down this right of way that we have, you're into the township parcel. This is extremely, we have a terrain issue here with the water plus this floodway to get to the back of the building. Right, so if you're able to come in here and kind of hug this side, you have to get across the widest part of the stream. So we have some topography issues, and this is usually always wet. But then if you look at the east side of this along Brookside, you have that hillside drop off there as well. So when we looked at that, we said, how can we get to the campus? We thought the easiest way would be to go this route. Because there's actually even a little crossing bridge here as well from the part of the abandoned farm. It's right in here, I believe. And that's flooded out and that's widened that. So we couldn't even get across on that side to get there in an easy way. So that's kind of why we looked at that. I mean, look, we can have Brian, we'll look at it and cost it and see where we are. If we go Brookside to behind here, but I think it's going to be significantly more dollars.
Okay, but just bear in mind, in addition to having the 80-foot or 100 or 50-foot half width along Brookside, around that property, there's also an access easement that's on their land, but it's a public access easement. So it was put there so that we could get around it before they tore down the house. So you can either go along Brookside or behind the house.
Like this direction?
Go around back.
We'll need to pull the plan and see if it's actually, if there's anything designated in there.
Yeah,
Julie.
you want to use the mic? Join the party.
Maybe just keep in mind too that you make that path, although it might be less expensive, you make it go too far out of the way. A kid on a bike is not going to take, they're still going to drive down.
True.
So I mean, a little ways out of the way, yeah, that's fine.
There is a
They're riding from Hidden Valley up there at Lorimer Country Road and coming down, and then they're going to go way over and then come back. It's not. And that, I guess that's for years we've been, when I was on Park and Rec, we were just begging, is there anything that we can do? Because kids on bikes, one of these days, we're gonna see one fly across that road and not get back up.
Mm-hmm.
Just really, and the biggest thing is that section of the bridge, of course. If you're on the side of the road and a car comes, at least a kid can swerve over and fall, hopefully fall onto the side of the road. You're on that bridge, you're stuck. So there's got to be some other way to.
All right, thanks, Julie. So I would, listen, from my perspective, I think if you're looking at everything you showed us tonight from a priority perspective, in 2023, you're looking at the link between Brookside and Wild Cherry. You're looking at the bathrooms at Spring Ridge Crossing. You're looking at the parking lot, trail access to the pond at Kratzer. I think they're probably the three low hanging fruit in terms of what needs to be done, what it costs, and how readily we can start things in the short frame. I think from that point on, you're probably looking at, the connection from the township building to Sauerkraut or to Brookside in some way, shape, or form. However it lays out, but that's probably a 2024, because of crossing of creeks and things like that. You know, maybe we're into 2024 and we're looking at a more extensive trail at Kratzer. You know, that what you showed, Bruce, that goes up and around and into the, you know, the, what is it, Lamplighter or into that area. And then, no, Harvest Field.
Jarrett Farm
Well,
and
actually,
the Knoll.
I would actually prioritize the bridge connecting Spring Creek to
Fifth project,
the path of Four
Spring.
Seasons.
Spring Creek Road Bridge.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
that's the
well,
last project.
Oh, I didn't know that was on.
That's on this list. Let's put it in priority.
Yeah, well, listen, for me, I think it's a huge priority because I walk it. So
Okay.
it would be nice to be able to not have to walk to the end, turn around and walk back.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to do the loop.
Where does that fit in with Kratzer and so
So I would.
sounds
tell
like
you
your
that
first
that-
So just put that down as number 4.
Yeah.
as all,
That's
okay,
like
so
a 2024, fingers crossed.
Yeah, that
I think
has some committing time.
There was no-
hold on.
there's no plan associated with that, because there's already an existing plan. I didn't attach a plan to this,
Down,
but there is a
down.
budget. I put together a budget and
Almost like the last
some discussion topics for that.
When you talk about that, are we talking about building a bridge that connects the two trails? Or are we talking about using that, trying to use that roadway?
Just building a bridge to connect those two trails. So I guess I have questions for you about that project, as well as, so that project came back in at over $1 million.
But that was because it was PennDOT design.
That's what we assumed too. And that's what we've heard. That was kind of the discussion of, that's one of the alternatives. Do we want to go back in, basically, I would say value engineered, except it's gonna basically end up being a redesign. We're gonna have to go back and re-permit it. We're looking at an alternate location,
Well-
potentially where the LCA.
Well, there were,
stone-
there were
road
issues
is-
before associated with disturbing wetlands,
Yep.
but then
LCA put
LCA.
that.
LCA came in and took care of that problem. So,
That's why if we
it's-
can cross there.
Yes.
so if we
agree.
can go ahead and just put in a precast.
Yeah,
kind of
prefab bridge, yeah,
prefab
sure.
Bridge and
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've discussed that at its narrowest point to come across here and see if we were able to do something of that sort. We get that the trails won't connect technically, but if we can either connect the path down or have people, know to walk down this portion, this side, of course, the west, they're just gonna come here anyway, and they're gonna see that connection point. Up here, we may have to address something, but that was like a 300-foot type bridge as it went over here. And I think this is, about 40 feet when we looked at it. So it's just a matter of being able to see which is more cost effective.
yeah, Jandal even gave us $200,000 at one point.
You're about
Was
40
that
feet.
Still sitting somewhere.
No, I got sucked into the general fund.
What is that, 40 feet?
About 40 feet.
And the boardwalks and the other parts of that project were, I'm sure, a huge driver of that cost. Those boardwalks they're not cheap.
But I mean, you could basically, you could connect the two trails just a little more, as opposed to straight across, if we can cross them.
Yeah,
That would be huge.
the previous plan actually had the crossing even further away from those two. Actually, to the south, like another 7 feet.
It's also huge because Julie, as you brought up about Kratzer Farm, you get down that part of the trail on the Four Seasons side, it's a little dicey. You're very secluded from a lot of things. And I know even myself, like I'm walking or running with headphones and I'm down there, I'm very aware of what's going on around me because you get somebody from anywhere down there, no one would ever know. At least there's a connection. You can get out to civilization.
Yeah,
There's a lot of developments
So
too.
we're not big pond.
Yeah, it goes below the pond.
It's between the creek and the pond.
Yeah.
That pond is big.
It's huge. actually goes
Like a
around,
little lake.
it goes around two detention basins, one that's never full. And that's on below Farmington Hills to the backside of Four Seasons. And then the Four Seasons one, which is huge and is always full.
Well, I think it might be designed
I think it's
as a
designed to
wet
hold,
bottom.
yeah.
wet bottom pond, so they
You-
can, so
there is
they
a-
can have their,
Yeah.
water hazard.
And there is a spillway. There's a spillway. If you go on the trail, you can see where the water can come out if it gets to a certain height.
That's nice.
It is nice. Listen, it's a great place to walk because you can walk right down Tuscany where I am and pick up the top of the trail. It goes behind the houses, and then it goes down and around and behind Four Seasons, and it ends right there. If you kind of go over, then you can go up, up to the bridge there on Spring Creek and come back into the Grainmore development and back up to Sauerkraut. So it would be one continuous loop.
Yeah, and I walk through Pratzer and then get on that little private road and then walk over to Seam Road. And wind.
Well, and Seam would connect right to back into there.
Yeah, and so then I
Seam goes
gotta
right
cut
on.
through one, I gotta cut through one lot. And then down.
You own that lot too.
Yes.
Township property.
Which one?
No,
In the sea. That's private.
Yeah, that one right there.
yeah. Okay, yeah, but you walk through that one and then you get into the open space. And you can walk around.
That connects you. You could go from Pratzer Farm, roughly, to Spring Creek Road without ever having to walk on Spring Creek Road, the super highway with the speed.
So that piece of that is a 5 or 6 as priority for the bridges that.
Yeah.
Is
Is that just that bridge completes a loop?
The key, gets you somewhere.
Yep.
As Maury said, it gets you to
It gets you
a
some-
place.
You see LCA rip that little pump house.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
gone.
gone.
Oh, it's still there, in rubble, but it's gone.
It just happened.
Yeah, it happened last week.
All right, any other questions for Brian or what we talked about? I think this gave us really good direction. I mean, I think I definitely got something out of it now. and We can kind of move forward with what we're looking at. So
Well, it's the most productive conversation I think we've had in about 6 years around these things. So
it does give us direction. It's very helpful. And I appreciate that.
super.
You know, what we need to do is make sure we had enough Brians on the dais. Oh, that's all it took.
That is true.
The only other things is one, we actually had all of these, we had a large section of the township flown that encompassed all of these projects. To get the photography is the relatively cheap part. To process that into topo is the expensive part. So we can now take those photos and turn them into topography and start designing right away. We did that ahead of time because we did it before any of the leaves were on the trees. So we did it about a month and a half ago.
There's a movie out somewhere about the concert.
So we're really ready to start moving on some of these.
But the,
So is that
but
something
the
we,
township did, made that drone movie. Pratzer Farm.
Not that I
6, 7
know.
years ago.
No idea.
so is that something we have to, Bruce, we have to decide on turning those into topographic?
We'll talk about it. I think we can pick the segments we're going to go focus on now. I think that'll help us. Brian has them laid out in a grid,
Yeah.
so we'll get it.
Well,
We'll get what we need.
The idea was to get all the photography done at the same time so that as you picked and choose, then you don't
cherry
have to
pick
worry
whatever you
about
need.
time of year. We just call up the company that did the fly, say convert this section
Right.
topo. We'd go out, we send our guy out to do a couple of tie-ins and we're good to go. So
Can we use that to get new pictures of our parks for the lobby here?
Probably not, because there was no leaves on the trees. Probably
I
not.
don't need leaves. I just want to see the park.
Probably
They're so
not.
old out here. Okay. Anything else on this topic?
Good, Brian?
Yeah, the only piece was that the working with Stan, I think you hit on that.
Yeah.
That
We're
legacy
kind of,
plans.
yeah, we're kind of in tandem there.
Okay.
Okay.
Brian, thank you
That's it.
very much.
Hey, thank you, guys. I'm out of here. I'll stop. Brian's got it for the rest of it.
Okay.
So, thank you guys so much.
Very good discussion.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, so item 3, we're going to discuss at the next workshop.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know we distributed the plan. It's there. We'll be anticipating comments. So, and Stan will be here to work on a presentation.
All right, item number 4, final review of draft for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee.
Yes, I appreciate it. We circulated this again. We were speaking to everybody. We got some resident feedback. We also got feedback from the solicitor and members of the team. You'll notice we just made a few edits specifically on the Parks and Rec. After discussion here at a workshop, we had talked about moving that from 5 members to 7. So we increased the residents on that committee. We also had some questions about, terms and expiring and the committee members serving at the pleasure of the board. So we defined that. We also made sure that we defined that we want every effort to hold public meetings in evening hours, and encourage that public input and involvement. That's the whole point of, the committee. We also added, if you notice, a section on the duties. We changed a few of those just because we thought it was better to taper a couple of those down. We were repeating ourselves on 2 of them, so we worked to streamline that. And then we added the limitations on this to once again say, the Citizen Advisory Committee, they have no decision-making authority. They don't incur expenses. They don't make payments. They don't do any of all those things. And then we also want to be bound by the social media policy of the township to refrain from making official statements out of those committees from that. So those are the changes we made in the parks. And I feel at this point, we're ready to move that one forward to eventual ordinance updates for that chapter 1. Unless there's, all right, I'll make sure we fix the typo in the last paragraph. And same with item 5, you'll notice I put this out and we're waiting for feedback. We wanted to have it internally, and then I want to put this to the fire chief as well as the emergency management coordinator. I talked to Vince. So we kept this basically the same on where we were with the setup, 7 members, the township fire chief or designee, the director of the Macungie Ambulance Corps designee, the emergency management coordinator, township staff member, and then
Talk to the state police.
we haven't talked to them yet, but we know that we want their input. And actually, we know that they like to participate in meetings. So the level and extent that they may be able to participate on an official capacity, we want to make sure we have that. But yes, they're somebody that we want as a player if possible.
And so, yeah, we ought to initiate a discussion with them and invite them to participate in any way.
And that's what, even if they're kind of a member of the committee, maybe we just say that they're a member, but with no standing. If that, we can go around that.
But yeah, and then whatever they feel comfortable with, we ought to reflect it in their membership.
It was a conversation we've had as well to get them here and encourage them to move forward. So with that one, we added a thing about the public meetings. We did streamline a couple topics in the duties, cut that back, made that a little less ambiguous. And then we also added, just like the Parks and Rec, the limitations about the committee and the public safety making comments in line with the social media policy. What we'd like to do is, if the board's okay, I'd like to circulate this to both of those groups now. I believe there was discussion at one of our workshops to share that with Parks and Rec, share that with public safety, get the feedback and kind of know that we're going in that direction.
Would you first talk to the state police?
I definitely will. I definitely will.
Okay.
Yeah, we will make sure that we include them as best as we can. We believe that they are an important stakeholder on that group. So, sure. Unless there's any other questions with that, I will make sure we do that reach out. And
Any other questions for Bruce on either items 4 or 5?
Good.
Okay.
all right. And you wanted us to circulate that to the current sitting committees, correct? I just wanted to
After you
clarify.
talk to the
Yes, he's
state-
talking
After
to
the
police.
state. Yeah. But recreation, I can
Yeah, you
circulate
can go
now.
with recreation.
All right.
After you fix the typo.
After I fix the typo, last paragraph.
Okay, item 6, review of proposed fee schedule amendments.
So we have several updates. Most of them deal with the can't speak tonight, road occupancy permits. You'll notice we've adjusted our fees with that slightly. Those are the fees paid for those people like the utility companies, cable company that want to go in and occupy and dig up our street to run various facilities. The other item that you'll see, we wanted to have for our security releases, with our 6th release for request, $300 per each release. This is to make sure that we, account for the time that it takes when developers sometimes want to set a release every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks for, 5,000 here, 15,000 there. While we appreciate, we want to give their money back in a timely manner. It also takes staff legwork to make that happen. So we said at the 6th one, we wanted to start to incorporate a charge for that. We thought 6 was substantial and would give us enough, normal project to work through that. So.
One question I had on those rates is there were rates for if you apply for a preliminary plan or a final plan. What is the rate for if you apply for a preliminary final plan?
When they actually have been putting in for both the preliminary and the final.
And so is it
So it's
200
joint.
per 200 per lot for both each? So it's $400 per lot?
Yeah, 3 times.
Huh?
It's 3,000.
Plus there's a fee.
If you go for single family homes, if you go above a certain amount, yeah.
And then there's a plus 200 per lot or something.
Mhm.
And so is it for? Okay, but is it 400 because they're doing preliminary final, or how does that work?
If they go above, yeah, I mean, basically, we've been telling people all along, if you're coming in for preliminary final, you're joining it together, the fees are together. And if it's the will of the board, I mean, we could come up with a separate line for that, but for us, it's fairly simple.
No, I was just wondering that. So.
Yep.
You're doubling it if they come in.
We're doubling it if they come in.
Okay.
Yep, and we've gotten a lot of preliminary final land developments as of late, especially on the commercial side, so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Bruce, based on a discussion we had earlier today, is the 3,000 for the escrow enough?
I believe so at this point. I mean, we may have to make an adjustment. We should just confirm the number.
Yeah.
We may have an adjustment on the escrow amount. So that we don't have to continue to go back and follow up with billing. So,
Escrow for plan reviews.
yeah.
The initial up to plan recording, so all the reviews to get it to the point where you're ready to record.
That sounds pretty light.
It's significantly low. So
Yeah.
we may have to make an adjustment. That always helps billing, because if not, then billing has to go back and follow up right away
Right.
on those. So we would respectfully ask that we, at least, if we come back with a number, that we've reviewed that and feel comfortable, a little more comfortable. Lest the board would want to see it again.
Any preference? Then I would just,
We'll make the adjustment.
very good. Okay, item number 7, update on line striping project, bid opening June 6th.
Yeah, just to remind the board, and of course, we won't have a workshop before that next meeting that we can work an approval. That the township does do a line striping contract every year for public works. That has been prepared in tandem with the department. Brian and the group have done that spec. It's actually out on pen bid at this point. We were waiting those responses. We'll have a tally. It's a pretty standard agreement. I think, Brian, too, correct me, because there was a question about it last year. We included some of the bike path
Yes.
areas in that.
We have.
So bike paths on areas that are painted have been included in that contract.
Yep.
As well. So we would just ask the board to, if we get a favorable letter and we receive bid responses, to approve the lowest, most responsible bidder as deemed by the engineer. So unless there's any other questions on it.
Okay. Any questions for Bruce? Okay, moving on. Update on Turnpike Commission widening of bridges.
Yeah, and I'll let Nate and Brian jump in on this as well because they've been on the conversations with the Turnpike Authority. Just wanted to, Renee, can you throw that up on the design piece we have as part of that, if you have that exhibit? So there's always discussion and staff tries to be very proactive about the connectivity within the township. And as we've, spent some quality time discussing this evening, when we look at these replacement bridges as they are coming in line with the Turnpike Commission's agenda over the next 10 years, by the time you look at, help me out, Nate, East Texas, Lower Macungie, Hamilton Boulevard, and
Yep.
there's one more. Indian Creek.
Indian Creek, yeah.
Yeah. So when we looked at this, we've approached the Turnpike and said, look, we want to make sure that we have connectability from one side of the township to the other as this cuts the township into two. Part of the potential solution that we have is to ask them to do a widening of the bridges instead of sidewalk on those bridges. You'll see that detail on the bottom left. We asked for some additional space so that we could have walking areas. The reason we did this, those would be designated by painted lines and delineated in the spring, summer, potentially with the stand-up type plastic, hard plastic delineators. We could do that, or the authority, if they put in actual sidewalk, wanted the township to enter an agreement that we maintain, repair, clear those sidewalks in the wintertime and have all of the future infinity maintenance. So we're proposing that, at least on the staff level, that we designate those instead with the painted lines. That releases us from that obligation for that sidewalk section. Wanted to make sure the board was okay with our course of action, as these bridges are, like I said, in design, and they're going to start one here in 2023. So did I miss anything, Nate?
No, you covered it. I mean, right now, the sidewalks would be covered, but as part of the replacement, the township would have to enter in the agreement with PennDOT. So we'd be losing we'd be gaining new responsibility that the township would then take on. So our fix, or at least our discussion, is they're giving us the space for a walking area, and we can use those plastic reflective delineators that have the heavy cement base and put them up seasonally and then take them down at the end of the season.
And those are 11, both of those shoulders are 11 feet wide, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's abundant
So
space.
So there's plenty of room for both bikes and walkers.
Yeah,
in that
there's
area.
abundant space. So we would delineate it similarly to what you see in, honestly, I mean, I think a couple of good examples. I mean, they have in Philadelphia in spots and Manhattan in a couple of spots, and it seems to work. So
Yeah.
So it's better than being on the hook for going out every snowstorm or ice storm. So
And we want to,
this would be for wherever we have a bridge going. So they're starting Indian Creek, then it's going to be Lower Macungie Road, then it's going to be East Texas. They're making their way up to Hamilton. And the discussion really came when we were talking about Hamilton, because as the board knows, we've been working so hard to try and get the connectivity along the whole corridor. We have sidewalks on that bridge right now, and then all of a sudden we were going to lose it. Just like with Lower Macungie Road, where we're having some connectivity and we see, options there in the future. We didn't want to lose it. So
and
if the board's comfortable,
yeah, we wanted to make sure you were comfortable in not a sidewalk, but
right.
just roadway.
I
Yeah.
am comfortable with it as long as it's wide enough. That the 11-foot wide sounds great. Getting down to 8 foot would be, I would view, the very bare minimum. So yeah, at 11 foot, I'm great with it.
So just so you know, Maury, the 11 is on one side. It's signified on one side, and then on the other side, there's enough room for a shoulder for turnoff, but it's on the one side.
They're not proposing two 11-foot
Yeah.
sides.
Correct.
Huh?
Right.
They're not proposing two 11-foot
How wide
sides.
is the other one?
5'10".
This is 5. And then this is,
five.
the alternate would be an 11-foot shoulder.
And that's still a widening from what we have now.
Uh, I'd rather have 2 8s.
2/8.
We can talk to them. I honestly don't recall how they chose the 11 and 5. Obviously the math works out nice to go 8 and 8, but we've had what, easily a half dozen of these meetings. These guys are very thorough. I apologize. I do not recall what prompted the 5 and 11. I suspect it has something to do with how the geometry works out, but we can see what we can do. I mean, I think the gist of getting this onto the board's agenda tonight was to make sure that you'd be understanding of why we wouldn't have a dedicated sidewalk.
And if it's wide enough,
Right.
that's fine.
Understood?
But I've walked across the Brookside Road Bridge over the Little Lehigh and yeah, that's not wide enough for my comfort level.
Right.
Well, the good news is the bridge is being widened from what it currently is, and we're talking about line painting. So if it's both sides or if it's one side, we have the ability to work with them on that design right now.
Well, and I guess, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if you look at that template, just so we know, can relate to it. If you look at the existing Indian Creek Road typical section that they're showing now, it's 6 and 6. So you're talking about 8 and 8. You really could look at that bridge now and figure 2 feet as opposed to the 11 and the 5. So is that 6 feet tight in there? You know, knowing that you're going to get 2 feet on it.
But Indian Creek has 6 feet on it.
Yeah, that's what it's showing now. It says 2 6-foot shoulders on it. So that would give you like a relative perspective
Well,
on what 8 would.
That's what I was saying, that, yeah, the wider it is, the better. So, yeah, I would.
Yeah.
like-
And you'd have to think if they have 2 6s now and it shouldn't be difficult from a geometric standpoint to go to 2 8s.
The distinction we need to make though is they do have 2 6-foot shoulders now, but the travel lanes are only 9 feet wide.
If that's drawn to scale, they put the weight right over the beam.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they don't split.
So again, we can find out, these guys are pretty responsive. I'm sure if I shoot an email out tomorrow, we'll find out, before we see you guys at the next meeting. But just for the matter of perception and certainly perspective of a pedestrian, the existing bridge, the lanes are only 9 feet wide.
So the new lanes are going to be
So-
11.
The new lanes will be 11, which gives the vehicles more wiggle room, which is going to give a pedestrian, you're going to
Right.
feel like you've got that much more room. Even though, I agree, the wider the better. But these guys obviously have to factor cost in as well. I'll see why they went with the 5 and the 11 and see if we can't go to 8 and 8. It might have something to do with how the geometry works for the approaches on either side at this particular location. But it's important for the dialogue moving forward to know that the board is okay with, I'll say, just a macadam area for pedestrians.
That's 8 feet
That-
wide
no,
or
yeah, understood.
wider.
Yeah, no, understood. That was very clear. I just mean in general, that's what we wanted to make sure of.
Yeah.
Any other questions about this at this point? Okay, moving on then. Review of sewer planning module for 2150 Elbow Lane.
Yeah, I can take this. This is about as easy as you can get. We had a single family home that wanted to connect, went through the process. It's existing residents. Our SEO processed it. We did everything on our end. And they just want to connect. It doesn't involve anything new. So,
A grinder pump running through like 300 feet of pipe to get to a manhole.
yep. Now we are going to look at, and we have been talking about the possibility of some form of an agreement or whatnot. We're going to look at that at the back end. And that agreement would be to make sure that the landowner in perpetuity recognizes their responsibility for a grinder pump. But, the people who are there now recognize that they're putting it in. It's just 3 or 4 owners down the road or an owner or 2 down the road, making sure that they know that they're responsible
And
for it.
also all of that line, the lateral until it hits the manhole, which is a good ways off of their property, ought to be their proper responsibility as well.
Into the right of way. That's something we've been discussing internally, actually, as early as today.
So, yeah, as long as they're covering the responsibility for that 300 feet or whatever that run is, it's a pretty good sized run. But anyway, yeah, then it makes a lot of sense to let them do it.
Hey, any questions? Okay, update on partnering with Upper Macungie for pool and splash park.
All right, I'll just cover this and then roll into my report as well. So I had a discussion with Bob Ibach. Bob's the township manager in Upper Macungie. We were talking about our pool facility as well as sharing services as we do for most things, including roads. One of the things that we talked about and we approached, he approached his board and I wanted to approach this board. There was a question about if the township would be willing to do something to allow Upper Macungie residents to become members of the pool back here for potentially a reduced rate. Nothing where they would come in at the gate, like a reduced gate fee. We didn't think as a staff would be an appropriate thing. One of the things that they had thrown out was use of their splash park up there, maybe some kind of rate cut on that side of it, just to see if the township, if for that or anything else that we would be interested in participating in on a recreation side. Now we realize the value of the splash park. A non-resident splash park pass is like $20. A resident there is like 10. Our non-resident fees for the pool are significantly higher. You know, it's like $100 difference in a family of 4 from like $350 to $250. But we were trying to think of ways of how we can encourage members down here at this pool and spread the word. And then is there something that residents could use there? And that's why the splash park was in there. So we both said that we would take it back to our boards and see if there was any willingness to explore those options. We did talk to recreation, you know, and it is something that we've talked about, like that is that value of the splash park, you know, enough to offer a reduced rate, or is there something else, or is there a way that, you know, we could encourage pool memberships here? It's always a important thing. We did offer summer camp because we do have some spots in our summer camp, and they were actually they're full on their end, and they didn't have any really residual extras to be interested in that side of it for our offer. But you know, just didn't know what the board thought. Do we drive some membership at a reduced rate?
Well, what's the difference in price from our residents to non-residents?
It's about $100. So a family of 4 is $250, I believe here. A family of 4 non-residents is like $350.
So, I mean, but my second question is this: do their residents signing up here limit the number of residents we can have?
And that was a question too, and a concern that maybe that was brought forward of like, hey, is that going to force like overcrowding where we have to turn people away? I mean, maybe at this point we've sold 178 memberships. So in years past, we sold over 400. I think last year we did like 250. So yeah, is there a situation where we could be loaded on a busy day?
Right.
Like, do we think the response will be significant from Upper? I can't, you know, maybe 50 people
Yeah, I mean,
potentially.
I would tell you if it gives us the opportunity to increase our membership, that increases revenue regardless of what the discount is. And I might say instead of it being $100 between an out of town resident versus a resident, make it 50 for them and then have them make theirs 15 for us. So you're cutting it halfway. You know, if it's $10 difference for their in and out, or $100, we go to 50 and 5. It's only going to increase our numbers, which is more revenue. Plus anything ancillary. I mean, I don't have, to me, this is more of a more of an internal policy issue. It's not really a board issue.
Well, I think it was,
Your-
I think it was a board issue, right? Because we're gonna alter a fee, and I didn't want to just alter a fee without bringing it back to the board and say, hey, are you, and have those questions like, hey, a resident's like, well, why, I'm a resident, why would I pay X and this non-resident's paying Y? That's why I wanted to just make sure I brought that back and kind of,
Well, and I don't think we have to advertise in our stuff. Upper McCungy can advertise it to their people, but we don't have.
right. If they have people ask like, oh, is there a pool facility around? Yeah, you can go to Lower Macungie, like, it's,
Is it Upper
$50.
McCungy resident costs this?
yeah, it's 300 instead of 350 as an Upper Macungie resident. We'll take your, we'll take your monies, we'll coordinate with the township. We'll pass through with, we'll pay the township directly for just like any other program and go from there. So,
I'm sorry, Bruce, did you say Upper McCungie has a splash park?
they do, it's up in Grange Park. So it's
Okay.
$10 for residents plus a $10 key fob, $20 for non-residents plus a $10 key fob. And you get your $10 back if you turn your fob back in. So they thought that would be
Yes.
something people would enjoy, at least on our side. So. All right. So if we go back and we split the difference and go like, whatever it would be, if it's 100 between a resident and non-resident, we're happy with 50 more for them. And then we're happy with,
They're putting a preferred position versus everybody else.
we're happy with 15 for the splash park for the township.
Anybody have any other thoughts or objections?
As far as other potential cooperation, what does everybody think of the idea of an ice?
Permanent,
Huh?
permanent or temporary?
Bruce will be there tomorrow, but general.
But yeah, I mean, a permanent ice rink that for winter season, sort of like the rink in Bethlehem,
Oh, outside, outdoor rink.
an outdoor rink. It seemed, yeah, it seems like it would be too big of an undertaking for just Lower McCungy. But there was a rink that just shut down in Whitehall. And a lot of leagues and so forth that don't know where to go, so. How much it would cost and all that stuff, I don't know, but as far as a cooperative athletic thing, it seems like something that Upper and Lower might be able to pull off.
Yeah, I can definitely explore it with Bob. I would be always worried about our liability, but other than that, where we are. But, yeah, I mean,
Less than the skate park, is it?
Yeah, I think your liability would probably be similar to everything else we do because any organization comes in, we're requiring them to bring in, their own policy. So.
it's true, but when we renew our insurance, they ask for certain things like,
Yeah.
do you have a pool? Do you have a jail? Do you have an ice rink? So those kind of things trigger our,
Don't get me started. I used to pay more for insurance because of cheerleading.
but I think it's yeah, like, and that's the great part about Upper. I can't say enough about how their willingness from definitely with the street department and everything they do there. We have a really good relationship with them. We're continuing to try to build that partnership with North Whitehall and South Whitehall as well, and expand those areas of cooperation. I think it definitely saves the taxpayers' dollars when we can work together. The other couple things I have, just an update on the crossing guards, as we gave an update at the meeting Thursday, and I'll continue to give updates. The township did hear from the district, as we said Thursday night. They wanted to put out a 70-30 cost share and have the township still continue to administer the program. We did receive notification again today. Well, we responded back that we would want the district to take an active role in the management of that program. We did receive notification today asking if they could infer by my email that if the township would be interested in a cost share, if the district would actually maintain and operate the program. And I responded back that I would have to talk to the board if they would give us a proposal on what they would be looking at to include them operating and administering the program if they were looking for a cost share. So we'll see if we get another response, but that's the update for the board and the public. just on where we are. So we're getting close to the end of the school year. We've also kind of notified the guards that we're in this negotiation with the district. So they are also aware as a staff now too. So once again, we appreciate our crossing guards. However, this, the school district and the administration of the program, I will let you know if we get a proposal from them. So unless anybody has any questions on that side of it. The next item I have, just because we've been hearing from a resident, I wanted to update the board in case we hear further or the board hears feedback from the resident at a meeting. We've received a complaint about speeding on East Texas Road near the park and the church. East Texas Road is a state roadway. As part of that, we follow our accepted traffic calming guidelines. We do know the volume and speed of the vehicles that are traversing that roadway. With that, our policy, none of the items that our policy warrants a further study or request, including traffic accident data, as well as speeding above the 85th percentile. It hasn't met our thresholds for further study. The resident continues to contact the township and they're dissatisfied with that answer at this point. Just a couple of things to know. The only thing we can really do left is we could, not follow the policy and ask the state to study the roadway for a speed limit reduction. Now, the speed limit there is posted 35. The public works director has said that that's been posted 35 for 70 years or 60 years that he's been in East Texas. With that, the signage is posted. Anytime you ask the state for a reduction in speed limit, if they grant your approval, the township is responsible indefinitely for the maintenance and care of those signs. So in this instance, it's already 35. If we would request the state to look and say, is there a speeding problem here? And they say, yes, the roadway geometry in our study warrants a reduction 25 miles an hour. The signs go in and then the township is responsible forever. So we would need a board vote to have us send the request. With this one, since it's already 35 and they're posting the signs, I always have concerns that if we make the request and they come back and say, yes, it's 35 instead of 40. Now the township as well has, assumed the responsibility for 35-mile-per-hour signs, which the state is already assuming. So I guess for me and to convey to the board, our studies so far, this does not warrant any further action in our traffic calming book. We did notify the state that they are missing a speed limit sign. One of those was taken down when they did some road construction. The public works director sent notification to PennDOT that, hey, here's all your signs. They actually, all the 35s, they all have your PennDOT sticker on them. You're missing a sign at this location. We're requesting you put it back up.
I think just go. You've notified the guy that what our conclusions were. We seem approved.
All right. I appreciate that. We will, in case anybody hears from the gentleman, we'll tell them we're taking no further action at this point. The Truckster Town Special 537 study, the authority came and gave a presentation. We've also talked about it at numerous meetings, including the Planning Commission meeting. This is for the special project, the bypass line, to bypass part of Truckster Town and those wet weather events and come down into the Spring Creek Pump Station that the Lehigh County Authority owns. This is a study that the DEP required the township to do just in that required focused area. It's out for comment, 60-day comment period. I believe it's 60, not 90, 60-day comment period. We haven't heard any comments from the public at this point. LCA continues to promote and ask for public comment on their site. Upper Macungie needs to approve this special 537. They are on track to do that at their first meeting in June. We are on track to potentially have the board consider that at our June 16th meeting. So just wanted to give the board an update, remind everybody, we won't have another workshop before that happens. And wanted to make sure you didn't have any questions or you were okay with part of the process. So. Everybody good?
I'm good. Anybody else? Everybody good?
So it'll be after the comment period at the.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, fine.
And then just some overviews. You were provided with reports from the department heads on various things that are happening throughout the year, or year to date at this point. We saw a finance report. Director of Recreation gave her report on where we stand on programming, the craft show, and all of those things. Nate has his report for planning and building permits. Most notably, we still look to fill the full-time building inspector position. We had no applicants as of the end of last week. We may re-advertise. We had no applicants for the assistant zoning officer position. Nathan is working to potentially do a rewrite of that job description. So we're going to go back out for both of those. Just want to keep the board posted on staffing. So those are the highlights on that side of it. Unless I missed any projects, Brian, that you want to talk about, or Nate in your department side. That's all I have unless there's questions or updates from them. Oh, the one road, the RAL-UMAC starts, we got notified today. It starts next week after the holiday. Residents will be getting notification Friday as well. We heard from the contractor. So you will see some of that programming happening, I guess, the first week of June. So
What program?
that's the road resurfacing, the RAL-UMAC. I always get them confused. Is that the slurry?
I think that's the Nova chip.
Oh, that's
Okay.
If RAL-UMAC is either the Nova chip or the microsurfacing.
Yeah.
I never
Okay.
remember what the hell RAL-UMAC is.
I always
I think
mess
it's
it up.
microsurfacing.
So for those residents, please be mindful. There's going to be notices hung at your property, and you'll know not to park on the street. So unless there's any other questions on, that's the project I had to talk about.
Maury?
I did.
A request for preparation for next month's meeting. I would like to see what we've been spending on the types of things that Stan is talking about
Okay.
over the last like 5 years, because it's sort of been cyclical. It's somewhat cyclical. So,
Repairs or more repairs plus projects?
well, I mean, he's talking about $15 million worth of stuff, which comes out to be about 1.5 million per year. And have we been spending anywhere close to that? And
I can tell you right off the bat, no, because we haven't had those dollars, to that side of the budget. We've been hitting our maintenance for parks and maintenance for playground structures. We fund that every year, and he spends all of his maintenance money. Those items that we have as playground replacements, all of those things that they have not done in probably 5 or 10 years. So
Okay.
that number is going to be non-existent, right? Except for the maintenance and the repair side.
okay, so yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to fit 1.5 million into the budget.
It's going to be very difficult. And I think that's why we're bringing that conversation when we know that the capital budget's only about 1.3 million. We have 400,000 in debt service. That's 800. And then we've been doing roads and the fog seal out of that. So you're down to about 550. And that's the conversation with the board of that's all of the repairs, the elevator, the roofs, everything in there to show you that in that 1.3 million, we can't accomplish those playgrounds. We can't get those updates. And that's why we're behind on these replacements. We need to start replacements so that we can get in that cycle. And, the problem is now that 1.5 million is front loaded because for 20 years, we haven't been proactively replacing. And now that's why that number is so staggering. But we can have like I know finance always has by maintenance and those type of things. I can just see how specific we can get in it.
But yeah, so just thinking back on it, yeah, there hadn't been really very much spent at all on. Well, I guess there was the path from Brookside to
And there was those improvements. So that was like 880,000. There was the one at the parking lot at Wild Cherry. That was another component. Those type of things were in there, and we can pull those in the capital projects list. But, for an example, like last year we had, monies in to fix the tennis courts at Prater Park. When we went out, A, they couldn't get materials. B, they came back and the fencing ended up at like $90,000. So about 60,000 more than what it had cost us previously to run that because of materials. So like that project didn't get done last year. That's
Okay.
still on a pending list.
Okay, but so, yeah, if you could bring up the ones that we have done, like parking lot. And the
Yeah,
tree lawn.
yeah, definitely. We have all those separate by project. Sure.
And get a feel for what we are spending and how much more we can afford to put in. Go from there.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else for Bruce? Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, then meeting is adjourned.
Oh, can I have a quick